The volume solids of a paint is a very good measure of the paint's quality compared to the another brand. So this is a very important term used to determine the quality of a paint. For example, this can be simply called VS, volume solid. This is usually represented in terms of percentage. So volume solid is equal to, it is given by this equation. Volume solid is equal to, that is volume of pigment plus volume of the binder. When I say binder, it represents the solid binder. So let me call it VB is the volume of solid binder. Similarly, VP is equal to volume of pigment. You need not say solid pigment because it is already solid. But in the case of binder, it would be available as liquid with certain percentage of non-volatile material, like they may say 70% solids, 60% solid. So in that case you may have to work out accordingly. I will explain about this in detail. Now volume of pigment, right, divided by the total wet paint volume. Total wet paint volume, you can put WP. So when I say total volume of wet paint, so this is called the volume solid, and if it is given in percentage means into 100. So this is a very important parameter that decides the quality of the paint. Now let us see how to make use of this volume solid. The main benefit of knowing the volume solid of a paint, of course apart from helping to assess the quality, is you can calculate the spreading rate needed to achieve a required dry paint film build. Let me introduce another term, dry film build. Dry film build. Okay, so this describes the DFT, dry film thickness of the paint that is left on the substrate after drying. Are you able to follow? Right. Now the dry film build or dry film thickness is always measured in terms of micron. So micrometer. And the spreading rate can be called SR, spreading rate. This is usually given in terms of meters per liter, that is square meters per liter. So this is the required unit. Micron means 10 power minus 6 meter, that is the thickness of the film build after drying. And the wet film build is there are two types of film build. You can measure the thickness of the wet film, that is WFB, and dry film after drying, that is called DFB. So WFB means wet film build, and this is dry film build. We have sophisticated tool to measure both wet film build and dry film build. Both are given in terms of, that is microns only. This is micrometer. This is also given in micrometer. That is 10 power 6 minus 6 meter. Right? So we can have the equation, various types of equations also. For example, let me introduce various equations based on this DFB and volume solids. Let us consider the first equation to measure the dry film build. DFB. How can you measure the dry film build? You can use this equation, that is volume solid into 10 divided by spreading rate. So this is a very important equation. Similarly, we have, that is spreading rate. Based on this we can rearrange. So what could be the spreading rate? That is Vs into 10. You can bring this DFB here. Okay, so you can simply rearrange and get this spreading rate. Similarly, that is we can obtain volume solid using this equation, that is DFB into spreading rate divided by 10. So this is another way to calculate volume solid based on the application. And fourth one is, you can work out based on the equation, that is volume solid is equal to DFB into 100 divided by WFB. Okay, so we can make use of all these equations so that we can determine the quality of the paint. The DFB is calculated based on wet film also, wet film and that is volume solid. So the DFB can be calculated based on this equation. So Vs into WFB. What is WFB? Wet film build, that is wet film thickness, divided by 100. So all these are very, very important, and we have got various devices to measure the wet film thickness. Wet film build gauge gives some rough idea, rough estimation, but usually it should be as accurate as possible. They depend on the substrate. Suppose if it is even, you can have accurate result. If it is not even, it won't be. Usually, let me try to illustrate the wet film gauge like this. It is a device with a sawtooth like this. Okay. So it will be around 50. This is 75 micron. This is 100 micron. This is 120 micron. So based on the depth, it will have the certain value here. Okay. Usually this device is dipped into the wet paint, and until the two end prongs are pressed hard against the substrate. When the gauge is removed from the wet paint, some of the prongs will be wet and others dry. If not, the wrong sized gauge has been used. So you have to use the correct type of gauge only. So if the prongs labeled 50 and 70 are wet, 50 and 70, these two are wet, it means the film build is greater than 75 and less than 100. So this is the way this should be arranged. So we have to move the blade like this, and based on the wetting condition we can fix the range. I hope now you should be able to understand. And not only that, the wet film thickness of a paint can also be calculated if the spreading rate is uniform, and if it is known, then we can calculate WFB is equal to, this is a direct gauge, we can work out from the calculation from the equation also, that is WFB is equal to 1000 divided by spreading rate. Okay, so once you are able to find out the spreading rate, dividing this by 1000, that is 1000 divided by SR, you will be able to get the wet film thickness or wet film build. Okay, so usually it is compared with the accepted brand and based on which the decisions are made to qualify the paint. Low paint volume solids will result in low paint dry film build being applied, and in that case you may have to go for 3 or 4 coats, so it requires more paint volume, and such kind of low volume solid paint will result in poor sealing, poor hiding, and there will be a loss of gloss, and it results poor durability also. So always we recommend to go for high volume solids. But when you negotiate with the paint manufacturer, and if you force him to accept your price, then he will compromise on volume solids. So you have to be careful about the cost as well as the volume solids also.